Cyprus, which is
yeah. Well, I'm envious of Mike. I know Cynthia McKinney, and her people always say, "Oh, she'll come on," and then it always falls through. But I'm going to get an interview set up with her. But I appreciate your call. Yeah, Israel ramming her boat. She's trying to bring medical supplies into Gaza, and then I did see a blurb about now they won't even let her into Cyprus, and it's pretty obvious. The United States and Israeli lobby is very, very strong over the police state that is Cyprus. But let's get Webster's comment on that.
Well, I certainly condemn the Israeli blockade of Gaza, and I condemn what the Israelis did there. They killed about 1,500 people, and you didn't see the U.S. media screaming about 1,500 people dead, as they have now about a much smaller number, as far as we know, in Iran. And I would also point out that what Obama and Netanyahu are talking about is not really a two-state solution, but it's actually a kind of Bantustan, where there would be a limited sovereignty or maybe autonomy, self-administration, Bantustan for the Palestinians. I think what you've got to have is an independent Palestinian state with real sovereignty. But again, none of that will work without an economic development program for the area. There's got to be a Marshall Plan for the entire Middle East, or nothing else will work. And if that
would have been done 60 years ago, all this fighting wouldn't have happened. The people are in starvation level. And you're going to continue to have incredible conflict, which is what the bomb makers, which is what the defense establishment wants. They love a few hot zones they can dump weapon systems into. I mean, this is really just business.
And, of course, Obama's Cairo speech had nothing in terms of economics for the Palestinians. And the big, the unemployment in these areas is 50, 60%. It's out of this world.
But Webster, doesn't that fit, though, with the Obama model of he says, I'm going to be friendly to the Middle East and Persia, and then they launch the CIA destabilization. Whatever he says, it's the opposite. So he does the emotional salve, so there's not a blowback on the West, and so there's a debate about whether we did this or not, when obviously they did. Go ahead.
The idea with Obama is he's trying to appear to do a favor for the Arabs and the Palestinians. He's really not doing anything, with the goal, then, of using them as dupes, again, kamikaze puppets against China, cut off the oil, Russia, pick a fight with Russia any way you can. So it's not a good deal. It's pure demagogy. It's more of that trickery and dissembling that we've talked about as the hallmark of Obama.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go to Anthony in California. Anthony, you're on the air.
Hey, Alex, it's an honor to talk to you. I got 7 questions I'd like to ask. First of all, I heard you guys talking about bulldozing cities and towns in California. I live in California. What can I do? The second thing is I live on a naval base where military laws every day. You're not allowed to own a gun. Third of all, how do I make a big impact? That's wake up more people, influence the government with no money. Fourth of all, how do I arm myself for under $20 if I can? Fifth of all, front sight training, unfortunately, is far too expensive for me and my father. It's $1,000. My dad doesn't even make that much. What can I do? Number 6, if North Korea strikes with a nuclear weapon and it's total martial law and the police come and try to take me and my dad away, what can I do? And fifth, I want to make a comment. There was an episode of a show called Star Trek Enterprise where there was this Terran Empire, a parallel universe version of the Federation of Planets, that basically everything they're doing now, the New World Order, is what they do in that show. It's got an Earth with a logo. Logo is a sword where the handle is above the North Pole and the blade tip is below.
All right, let me try to answer that. I mean, that was I didn't even have time to write all those questions. You ask about how to get firearms training. There are a lot of free manuals online. Frontsight.com has some. If you can afford a firearm, I would suggest for training something like a single shot 22. You can get decent ones for like $100. Go out, shooting range. 22 rounds are very inexpensive. Learn how to shoot with that, and then you can buy something else a little more high-powered if you want. But for training, there are a lot of manuals, online training, simple safety stuff, how to use a firearm. I mean, there were just so many questions in there. I mean, let's take the false flag stage terror situation. The controllers, the oligarchs could stage a nuke attack and say that North Korea had done it. They could do anything. That's why the head of ABB, Rumsfeld, gave the reactors to North Korea to begin with. That's why the West helped arm Pakistan. This is all part of destabilization, so they can then play the part of the saviors later. Webster Tarpley.
Let me just say, in the 1930s, what you see is when you get depression, really serious economic depression of the type we're going to have increasingly, if you don't solve the depression and fight the depression and defeat it and get a recovery and some kind of turn towards prosperity, then you get the fall into dictatorship, right? Germany, best example, but every place in Europe obviously went in some form of dictatorship, or just about every place. If you want to avoid that, you've got to address the economic crisis. You've got to end the economic crisis. The only way you do that is with these American system or New Deal measures. The Austrian side argues, well, we've got to let the depression play out. We've got to let it take its course, right? We can't do anything about it. It's part of a cycle, and the cycle is not controllable by us. No, we can and we must. So the Tobin tax, stop foreclosures, usury laws, and things like this. You've got to defend civilization in California through political action, and that's what I recommend. Political action. Be political, right? Whatever else you do all these other things if that's what you think is required. But the one thing you've got to have is political action, and it's got to be programmatic. And generally speaking, the problem is, as we see, is that the right-wing critique of Obama doesn't get anywhere, and you can see this because this is what Obama loves. He's always talking about Hannity and Limbaugh and all these characters. This is the opposition that he desires. He wants you to have to choose between Limbaugh and Obama. That's a terrible choice. That helps Obama to stabilize himself. What I think is likely to happen is a left-wing challenge, some kind of a New Deal challenge to Obama coming out of the Democratic Party in the same way that Ted Kennedy, weak vessel though he was, to be sure, Ted Kennedy gave Carter a real serious challenge, which then crippled Carter. I think that is what might happen in the Democratic Party, say, towards the end of next year.
All right, let's take another phone call here. Let's talk to Annie in New York. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you both. First, an observation, a quick one. You know, a couple of months ago, all the mainstream media outlets were pushing Twitter, remember? I mean, it was so orchestrated. It was like when all of the corporations came out with the, boxes of goods on the store shelf in 3 languages, But now they're saying, oh, this Twitter revolution in Iran. It makes me so sick that it's so orchestrated.
Well, by the way, ma'am, that's not your opinion. The State Department and the CIA admit that they were running Twitter during this and even stopped Twitter from doing regular maintenance that might shut down Twitter for a few hours one night when this was happening. And these were artificial Twitters telling people they'd lost the election that had been stolen from them. It was all staged. The external polls, nothing to do with the Iranian government, showed that Ahmadinejad was the winner. And this was a way to then get these youth, swarming adolescent masses, as Webster rightly calls them, to go out. And then suddenly our government's all for revolution while it puts out Department of Homeland Security reports saying protesting is illegal. Webster, have you seen these documents where they're saying the Army's being taught all protest is illegal and they're going to be shutting it down? I mean, they're certainly getting ready for martial law, but I don't see them getting away with it.
Well, the irony is that the U.S. foreign policy is now based on mob rule. What's their prescription for Iran? They say, we want mob rule. Forget about elections. We want mobs. We want rioters. The irony is, of course, then that the same television channels were confronted with real vote fraud in the United States in the year 2000, in Florida and other places, in 2004, in Ohio. Vote fraud in favor of Bush. When they were confronted with real vote fraud, they ignored it. They didn't have any time for that, right? They just swept that aside. So they have no credibility, and the Iranian thing is just a big fraud. And Twitter, I guess, is a cultural campaign. And as you're right, the State Department and the CIA obviously run, or at least partially run, Twitter. So don't believe anything you see on Twitter. It's also great when you turn on CNN and they're reporting what's on Twitter. Twitter is a sewer where anybody can float anything they want and have it reported then on CNN.
Well, I mean, it's clear but it's come out. I'm sure you've seen the articles, Webster, just admitting CIA and State Department run Twitter. I mean, it's their tool.
And it doesn't stop there, right? You look at Google, look at some others.
It's amazing. Ma'am, anything else?
I don't have
stay there. Stay there. We're going to come back to you. Webster Tarpley's our guest. We'll talk about false flag terror as well.